Welcome to ReganFit Radio. You're listening to the head coach, James.
Hey guys, welcome to ReganFit Radio, the best radio station on the planet for athletes. Here we go. First episode on the fly. We're going to be talking about a few different topics today, and I'll start with just kind of going over the rough structure for these videos. We're going to be talking about a few things that are really important for athletes. Then we'll just talk about some random stuff at the end, kind of, today we'll talk about who the greatest athlete of all time is. Bit of a scary talking point, might face some backlash for that one. And then we're going to finish off with a little bit of a teaser of what's to come for ReganFit. This is the first episode, so looking forward to the future. Feel free to subscribe, follow along, see what we're doing in the future. We've got big things planned. Let's get into the first topic for today. First thing I want to talk about is strength training for athletes. So, very important for athletes to be strength training. I don't care if you're playing, soccer. I don't care if you're a runner. I don't care if you're a cyclist. I don't care what athlete you are, what sport you're playing, you need to be doing strength training. I'm getting a bit amped up over this because so many semi-pro athletes I see that want to go pro, they're not doing this. They're not doing strength training, not in the gym, hitting the weights. They're not doing anything. They're just running, doing fitness training, doing skills, whatever. Very important to do all those things, but strength training can be so important to complement this if you want to become a professional athlete. For runners in particular, mechanical efficiency is so important, and it can be the difference between, runners that have a pretty similar VO2 max, similar fitness levels. Having a better mechanical efficiency can take you to the next level, and hitting the gym is so important. It'll take you from here to here. Like, honestly, being able to do that strength training, getting the muscles stronger, so important. And not necessarily getting the muscles bigger. You don't really want that as a runner or even as a soccer player or anything like that. Even a cyclist, weight is pretty important. But it can improve you as an athlete so much, just overall, just being stronger and having more efficiency in your muscles. Super, super important. The other big thing that it can do is, and that nobody really ever even talks about, is it's probably the best injury prevention method that you can use as an athlete. I think there's so many athletes out there who just never even think of this as injury prevention. Most don't even really think of injury prevention at all. Like, most of them will just kind of do some stretching maybe, and that's it pretty much. They think that, muscle tightness is what leads to injury, where that is true sometimes, but also muscle weakness is a big, big component of this. And so being able to strengthen the muscles that are most likely to get injured, obviously it depends on your sport, like a lot of people a lot of runners and stuff, hamstrings, calves, very important muscles to strengthen up, quads, especially for kicking sports as well. So we're not just talking about performance here, we're talking about injury prevention, injury management. And that's why, everybody who's in rehab, all the injured players are in the gym so that that doesn't happen again. They're strengthening those muscles, and a lot of physios will recommend, people with hamstring strains to pretty much get straight back on the weights to strengthen that muscle up again, because the worst thing you can do is sit on an injury and not train the muscle again. Worst thing you can do as an athlete. 100%. You need to be in the gym, hitting the weights, and there's so many different things you can do. I've said strength training. It's so important for pretty much every athlete to do strength training. But some athletes really need the power training, being able to move light weights fast. We can talk about that on another video. A whole topic in and of itself. I don't want to bore you with too many nitty gritty details in this, but I just really want to get this point across that you need to be in the gym as an athlete. You just have to be. Do you really expect to be competing at the highest level against athletes like Kipchoge if you're a marathon runner with your genetics alone? That's just stupid. Like, think about that for a second. Just stop and think about that for a second. No chance that you will compete with an athlete like that without something like strength training without using all of the tools at your disposal. You just have to be doing this. Have to. Okay. Let me just calm down for a bit before we move on to the next topic. That got me amped up a bit. Let's just tone it down a bit. The next topic that we're going to talk about, very important, something that a lot of athletes miss, a lot of just general gym goers miss. This is not just for athletes now, this part is for everybody. Periodization is super important and nobody really knows how to do it. Let's be honest. And I mean, in all fairness, there's no one size fits all for most athletes. Everybody's going to respond differently. And that's another topic that I'll talk about later on in another video as well. You know, the shoe's not always going to fit the same foot, or the same shoe's not going to fit every foot. Is more what I'm trying to say. So periodization is basically all it is just kind of progressing, deloading, progressing, deloading, progressing, and eventually you start here and you finish up here, here, here. But it's not a linear path. You can't, unless you in your first couple of weeks in the gym, you're not going to have a linear path to here. It's going to be up, down, and then up. You might even spike at some point. So, and it's more important for athletes than anybody, or anybody who's competing. Bodybuilders, even bodybuilders do this. Bodybuilders they'll have a period after competition where they just don't train. They eat whatever they want. They do whatever they want for a month or so. They come back into training. They're pretty light, whatever, cruisy. Have a deload every now and again. Deloads are very important. And deloads are the key component to these periodized blocks of training. You need to be able to drop fatigue after you accumulate it. Because if you're not accumulating fatigue, you're not training hard enough. So you need to be able to build up and then drop off. And a lot of people get this wrong anyway. Like, they don't understand what periodization is. And I'll bring up the definition for you. So the definition of periodization is the act of dividing a period of time into shorter periods of time. That's all it is. It's just breaking up a block of training. So you've got your block of training and you're just breaking it up into small chunks of training. And it's really important because you can't train at the same level forever. You just can't. You're going to build up too much fatigue, or you're not going to be training hard enough. One of those two. So years into months, months into weeks, weeks into days. Daily undulating periodization is very common for athletes, and particularly athletes, hybrid athletes who they need endurance, they need strength, they need, all of these different components, power, everything, speed. They focus on these different aspects each day. So each day has a different focus. Very important. Very, very important. Daily undulating periodization. Don't forget it. Google it. We'll look at a bit of periodization. We'll look at some different models in a sec. So, as I said before, you can't train at the same level forever. And I mean, every athlete knows this. Some weeks you're going to feel like crap. Some weeks you're going to feel amazing and you're going to feel great. And you will never be at peak performance every time you are required to perform. Ever. Never. No athlete is ever like that unless they're on gear. If you want to jab up, go ahead. Jab up, do it. I'm not recommending it. I'm joking. Don't sue me if you take drugs. I might clip that out. We'll see. It might make it a bit more entertaining. So, as I said, you can't peak all the time. You cannot constantly be at your best performance, even if you're just a normal gym goer, especially if you're a normal gym goer. If you're just in the gym for, building muscle, you want to look a bit better, whatever. You need to have deloads every now and again. The best way to do it is basically the aspect of your training that you want to focus on. Take that and start at the lowest level that you feel like you will get pretty good results from it. So, if you want to build your chest, right? For example, you want to get big pecs. you start at training, I think the recommended from the literature, the recommended number of sets is about 10. So you start at 10 sets a week. You could probably start lower than that if you want. Doesn't really matter if you feel like you get a pretty good pump, pretty good results from, 6 to 8 sets. You can start with that. And that seems like nothing, but you're not going to be at that for the whole period of time. So you start there the next week. You might do, start at 10 sets. The next week you might do 12. Next week you might do 14, then 16, then 18, and then you hit 20. And then all of a sudden, at 20 sets, you're feeling like you're quite fatigued and you feel like your weights are starting to, your performance in the gym is decreasing. Some deload. Athletes at the top level do this a lot, and you see, older athletes especially, they have weeks off, deloads. They don't, like I said, weeks off. They don't play because they need it. They need the deload. They've accumulated so much fatigue, and you accumulate more fatigue if you're older as well. But if you're a younger athlete, you can get away with longer periods of time without deloading. But you just need to push your limits, push every week to do more until you physically feel like you cannot do any more, and then deload. It's not that difficult. A lot of people overcomplicate it. You don't need to overcomplicate it at all. Just need to monitor your fatigue and your performance. So, and particularly, you can rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on every training session, training session, gym session, whatever. Rate yourself, scale of 1 to 10, how you feel like you performed. And if you can see a pretty consistent trend throughout a week, 2 weeks of lower performances, it might be time to just take a step back from your own training and just deload and go, hang on a second, I'm not lifting as much weight as I was able to before. I've had to drop my weights. I'm probably fatigued. I feel fatigued. I feel crappy. You will know that feeling. I know that feeling every time when I've hit, my massive 200 set weeks, whatever, and I'm absolutely just exhausted. I need 10 hours sleep unless, if I want to actually have some sort of energy throughout the day. That's when I know it's time to deload. And you will know that feeling as well. You'll see it straight away. You'll feel it and you'll know when to deload. If you're wondering when, like to feel it or what kind of feeling you should be feeling before you deload, like just Google it, just Google. I think the best way though is to track your weights, write down how many reps, sets, and what weight you used. And another thing that's really important, and this will help track performance, is to track either RPE or your reps in reserve. One of these two, and they're kind of the same thing. Depends on what you're training for. RPE is probably better. So RPE is that scale of 1 to 10 that I was talking about, rating of perceived exertion. Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being could not do any more reps if I had a gun to my head, and then 1 being, sleeping basically. Well, 0 would be sleeping, I suppose, but and yeah, so you scale that, and you can usually use 9 would be I've got 1 rep left, 8 I've got 2 reps left, 7 I've got 3 reps left. That's usually a pretty good guide to use. That's pretty accurate. And if you're using say 100 kilos, right, and you do 10 reps, you've got 2 reps in the tank 1 week. You build up in sets, so you do 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets, whatever. You get to when you have to do 5 sets, and you notice that you do 5 sets, 100, and you do 10 reps on the first set, and you can't move the weight anymore. Like you can't even get to 10 reps, so you get to 9 reps, and you get stuck, right? You're stuck under the bar. It's time to deload, right? You couldn't even hit the reps that you were hitting with 2 reps in reserve before. It's time to deload. You have accumulated enough fatigue that it's time to deload. And that's just a general example. If you're an athlete and you really feel fatigued and you feel like your performance is suffering, it might be a good idea to just kind of back off a bit in the intensity of training. Obviously, you can't just skip training, but just back off your intensity a bit in training, and just rest up. Don't do any extras that week. Rest up. Do your extras the week after, 100%. You don't need 2 deload weeks, but really drop that fatigue. Just get rid of it. It's the best way to do it. You can't just gradually bring yourself down and gradually because you're wasting so much time gradually bringing yourself down. Drop it and then build back up again. Best way to do it. 100%. That's periodization. Before we move on to the next topic, let's just have a look at some models of periodization. So I'm just going to bring up a couple of things here. So I'll bring this one up, the principle of progression. So this is an interesting kind of graph to look at periodization here. And basically you build up, build up, build up, build up, planned recovery. So you drop your load, build up, build up, build up, drop, build up, build up. And you see, you've gone from here to here, but it's not linear. You're not going straight to here. And the best time to deload, if you want to time it right, the best time is to do it just before competition. So if you imagine, you're building up here and then you drop off and you've got some sort of a competition here, this might be weeks, it might be months, it doesn't really matter. You've got competition here, so it might be days even, say if you play every week, you might be building up. This is probably not how I would do it, but I'm just saying, you build up and then you drop off. You've got your, game this week or something, maybe it is weeks, pre-season, and you've got your game here, drop everything, drop the fatigue, ready to go into that game and perform at your best. Same thing, say it's months for a cyclist or something. They build up, build up, build up, build up, and then drop all their fatigue, and then they perform. So this is where their performance is, and you can see their performance is better here than it was here. Like their raw strength levels has improved, and this isn't necessarily performance or anything, but it's just load. But you can see that if we drop the fatigue here, they'll be performing at their best. And that's the most important thing, is to time it. You need to be able to time it perfectly to get it right as an athlete. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic. I might just grab a drink of water before we do. Very important topic, this one. So stay tuned. For ReganFit Radio. Stay hydrated. Yuck. Okay. The top 5 athletes of all time. A bit more entertaining here. I've kind of got through not the boring stuff, but the important stuff. Important stuff. Not so fun, but still important. Go back, rewatch everything that I was talking about. It's so important. It's a bit all over the place, but if you watch it a few times, you'll understand and get everything you need to out of it. I'll summarize it all quickly. So strength training for athletes, just do it. Just do strength training. Google a workout. It doesn't have to be anything excessive, anything, too over the top. Just do it. Periodization, monitor how fatigued you are, and then deload when it gets too much, when you're too fatigued. Okay. See, literally that simple. That's all you need to do. Okay. The GOAT top 5 athletes. Now, I wanted to do something with this that I've seen a few, I've seen here and there. So I've got my top greatest athletes of all time question in ChatGPT. ChatGPT has given me its top 5 greatest athletes of all time, and it's a very interesting list. Let's just go through it. Let's go through it. Top 5 greatest athletes of all time is subjective, can vary depending on individual preferences and criteria. Interesting. Here are 5 athletes who are often considered among the greatest in their respective sports. Okay. Here we go. Michael Jordan, number 1. Interesting. Fair enough. I can see that. I do think, and it's an interesting talking point, but we'll talk about that a bit now. I think in order to be the greatest athlete of all time, you need to clearly surpass anybody else in your sport. Clearly, like the conversation cannot be had. If the conversation is had for whether you're even the greatest of all time in your sport, something's wrong. Something's seriously wrong with that. And you should not be considered as the greatest athlete of all time. You should be dominant in your sport. Michael Jordan is not that. Michael Jordan has got LeBron in the question. Is it Jordan or LeBron? Who's better? If the argument is there to be had, you can't argue that Jordan deserves to be number 1. Maybe top 5, maybe, but not number 1. not number one. Number two, Serena Williams. Interesting. She's that's fair enough. There's a pretty clear gap between her and number two. If you ask a random on the street who's the greatest female tennis player of all time, most people are going to say Serena Williams. So I can see that. I can see that. Usain Bolt, name me another sprinter. You know what I mean? He deserves to be there. It's fair. Muhammad Ali, another interesting one. There's a few in the conversation for this as well. I can't put a boxer on this list. Ali, Tyson, Sugar Ray, Floyd Mayweather, all are in the conversation. So for me, I can't have Ali on my list. And Pele's the same thing. Messi and Ronaldo. I think Messi and Ronaldo are better. Maybe other people disagree. That's just me. Don't come at me. All right. Don't fight me. I will fight you back. Okay. I'm just going to bring up my list quickly. My top 5 GOAT list. Just joking. I'm not giving you a list. I don't want to do that. Okay. I don't know what in order a top 5 would look like because you can't, it's almost impossible to compare certain athletes within the same sport and from different time periods, let alone different athletes from different time periods in different sports. I don't understand why people do this, to be honest, but it's just an interesting talking point, I think. So, just names that I'm going to bring up that I think should be thrown in the hat, right? So you've got your hat, put names in. I've already got the names that I talked about before. So Messi, Ronaldo, throw them in. Who's better? Don't know. Couldn't tell you. Could tell you, but I'm not going to. I'm going to reserve that for another day. Tom Brady deserves to be there. If you're talking about success, he's he's won a lot of rings. Deserves to be in the conversation. Wayne Gretzky. If you're talking about athletes who dominated their sport, he's won. Basketball, you got Jordan and LeBron. Tennis, I think, we talked about Serena Williams in the women's. In terms of the men's, I think Novak Djokovic has become the greatest male player of all time, but there are a couple others just below him, and I don't think the gap between first and second is massive. You've got Rafa and Roger, who are both very good as well, and in the conversation, you wouldn't get Novak as the answer every time asking someone who the greatest male tennis player is of all time. So, Novak, I think, deserves to be in the list more than the other two, but, you know, who knows? But there's one man, and he's probably my number one, who clearly surpasses anybody else in their sport, and no one will get it. No one will get it because it's not, I mean, some people might get it, but if you live in America, you won't get it, and you won't understand it. So the two biggest sports on the planet, football, number one, so soccer, number one. Number two is cricket. Cricket is the second biggest sport on earth, not played in America, so it's not really talked about on, if this guy is the greatest athlete of all time, which I think he is, just me personally. Cricket is a bigger sport than what most people realize, mostly because of India. They've kind of popularized it massively, and there's a lot of money to be made in cricket at the moment and in the future in particular. The greatest cricket player of all time. There's not even a conversation about it. Like if you know, you know. Don Bradman. How he's not on more top 5 lists, I don't know. I don't understand. Even if you live in America, like, do you have like walls up in America around the country where nothing goes in, nothing like the Iron Curtain in the Cold War? Like what is going on in America? How do you not know about Don Bradman? He deserves to be on every top 5 list ever. He's the go-to, and that's why he would be at number one. But he's the one that I can put on there and be sure of it. You know what I mean? So put him on your list. Google him. There's a clear gap between him and second. Couldn't tell you who second is. There's throw a blanket over the rest basically. But Don Bradman is 100% the greatest cricketer of all time, and you can't say that about many other athletes in their sport. So, and obviously, I don't know much about volleyball. I don't know much about European handball. I don't know much about what other sports, like snooker. I don't know anything about these sports. So that's because these sports are not big. I'm looking at big sports. Best athletes in big sports worldwide. Don Bradman tops the list. I want to talk about one in particular that I somehow see on more lists than he should be on, and that's Babe Ruth. I think to be a top five, and you could argue this about Don Bradman too, but he'd come from a different era, but he was still, very, very much, you know, a talent and an athlete in particular. But Babe Ruth, in order to be in the top five GOAT athlete list, you kind of need to be an athlete. And I don't know if you can call Babe Ruth an athlete. He was obese for the time. Most people couldn't afford to get to his weight. You know what I mean? Back then. So, yes, maybe I can see it with his statistics and whatnot, but I think in today's era, he'd be sitting on a couch watching baseball. I don't think he'd be out in the major leagues. I could be wrong. Bit controversial, this one, but just saying. Just saying, don't come at me. Don't come after me. He's fat, bro. Get over it. Okay. There's one thing I want to talk about actually with ChatGPT. I'll go back. I don't actually think I have it on here, but there was a list that I generated. I think I deleted the chat. Anyway, there's a list that it generated for me, which had, there's obviously something in ChatGPT which means that I have to put a female athlete on the list, which is fair enough. Like there's some good female athletes out there, and compared to their competition, girls like Serena Williams and stuff, they deserve to be in the conversation. But they obviously had come up with five men and had to replace one, and so it had Michael Phelps as one. He's in the hat as well. Clearly the best male swimmer of all time. And that was number two. Can't remember what number one was. Probably Jordan again. Number three, the third greatest athlete of all time, Michelle Phelps. Michelle Phelps. How good is Michelle Phelps? 23 gold medals. The greatest female swimmer of all time, Michelle Phelps. Now, for those who don't know, Michelle Phelps doesn't exist. Michelle Phelps is the female version of Michael Phelps in another reality. I don't know. But they've just come up with this person randomly so they can have a female on the list. It's a bit silly. It's a bit silly. There's so many good female athletes that you could pick, and you come up with Michelle Phelps. Come on, ChatGPT. I really wish I kept it. Really wish I kept it so I could show you. Anyway, let's move on. We'll wrap this up. It's been a good episode one of ReganFit Radio. I want to mention something that's coming up in the future of ReganFit. We will be launching a ReganFit online academy for athletes, gym goers, whatever, who are looking to build discipline and be around a community of like-minded, hardworking athletes. And I'll be launching this very soon, very soon. So in the next episode, I'll have a bit more information on it. And all I want is to bring this community together and have everybody working towards the same goal, helping each other out under the guidance of myself as a coach. And I think we can turn this into a pretty big deal in the athlete space. And all I want athletes who missed out to get another chance and to guide them down that second path. That plan B is what I want to be for athletes, and what Regan Fit Academy is going to be. It's going to be a plan B for the athletes that missed out. And the best thing about it is that there's going to be so many athletes involved. What I can tell you, I can't tell you what's involved just yet, but what I can tell you is that the first 50 athletes are going to get in for free. Free. That is crazy considering what's involved. Get around it. Look forward to seeing you in the Regan Fit Academy. as one of the first 50 members that get in for free. Thank you for today. It's been good. It's been great. It's been pretty fun. See you on the next episode of ReganFit Radio.